been affected again with the COVID virus. So let's keep him in prayers. Also, we've been praying for Ed Work's brother-in-law, Zerl Watson, and he will have spine surgery, a lumbar decompression and a lumbar discectomy in the L4 and 5 area of his spine. So keep him in prayers. Do want to mention, of course, the Barr family at the passing of our sister Adeline Barr last weekend. And this congregation, I know we're all as a family grieving and are eager to find ways to serve this family. As you can imagine, it's an overwhelming time for them. We're going to be ministering to this family for a long time, and there's going to be ample opportunity to serve. Right now, they need some space to figure stuff out, to just deal with things. If you have things that you'd like to say or share with them, can I ask you to put those in writing? Cards, letters, snail mail, things that they can hold on to and keep. At this time, texts and even emails are piling up, and they feel the burden of responding to them. Anyway, it's just such an outpouring of love that is greatly appreciated. But I'm asking the family right now to be respectful of their space while they make some decisions. We've been talking about services, and we don't have anything to announce yet, but hopefully we will in the next couple of days. So I did want to mention that to you as well. I know you're all wondering about that, but let's keep this family in prayer. We love this family so much, and of course we all loved Addie so much. There wasn't a brighter smile, a kinder sister in Christ, a sweeter natured sister that we had with her. So let's keep that family in prayer at this time. Okay, that's what I wanted to share with you before we begin. Of course, those who are continuing to fight cancer, and our expectant mothers, and let's not forget travelers. People are still traveling. Kids going back to school. Our college kids are headed back. Some of them are leaving tomorrow and the next day, so let's keep them all in prayer. Right now, let's lift our voices together and sing praise to God. Mike?
Good evening. We're going to sing 154, Give Me the Bible. We're going to sing all 4 verses and then the chorus. Let's sing. Give me the Bible, star of gladness, lead me to cheer the wanderer, lone and tempest tossed. No storms can hide that radiant, peaceful being. Says Jesus came to seek and save the lost. Give me the Bible when my heart is broken, when
Pray with me, please. Holy Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to be together as a family. Thank you for the new year. In 2023, help us be better servants of yours than we have been in the past. Lead us where we can be of greatest value to others. In 2023, encourage us to spend more time in your word. Help us to more closely align our lives with that of your Son, Jesus Christ. Please keep the devil away from us and your Spirit alive within us. We ask for a special blessing on the Barr family. Thank you for the opportunity to serve them. We ask for a special blessing on this country, that it may be a beacon of hope and light in this sinful world. In Jesus we pray, amen.
All right. Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me out there? All right. Testing 1, 2. Can I hear myself in here? All right, we're good. All right, so we are in the book of Nehemiah. We are going to be doing chapter 3, which I have been referring to as the chapter of the capitalized words. This is a lot of words. This is a lot of proper nouns, a lot of names, a lot of places, and we are going to get through this. But before we get too far into it, let's kind of recap where we are. So, Book of Nehemiah. Who is Nehemiah? Guy that prayed a lot. I like that answer. That's a good answer. Is a guy that prayed a lot. What was his official title? Cupbearer. Cupbearer to whom? King Artaxerxes, king of Persia. King, emperor, kind of interchangeable at this point. So, what was his thought? What was his idea? What was his mission to do? Rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Okay. All right, good. Now, last week we got to the point where he was inspecting the walls. He went out and he did a visual inspection. The first thing that he did there, after waiting 3 days, was, okay, what do I have to do? What exactly am I looking at here? He didn't tell any of the officials that were with him. He didn't tell any of the leaders of the city what he was doing. He went out at night on his own and took a look at what he had to do. And then he said what they needed to do, and then he was opposed and he was told that he was doing what? He's rebelling against the king. They asked him, are you rebelling against the king? Are you going to rebel against the king? And meanwhile, the king obviously knows that he's going to do this. The king requisitioned for him timber to specifically rebuild the gates of Jerusalem. So people from outside the city, some of the governors in the surrounding area are asking him if he's rebelling against the king. Meanwhile, the people inside the city, the people of Jerusalem, the people who have returned to Jerusalem have said, okay, we will rebuild Jerusalem. So, in chapter 3, starting in verse 1. To those of you who understand the Hebrew language, I apologize for what I am about to do. Then Elishab the high priest rose up with his brothers the priests, and they built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and set its doors. They consecrated it as far as the Tower of the 100, as far as the Tower of Hananel. And next to him the men of Jericho built, and next to them Zichar, the son of Imri, built. The sons of Hassenah built the fish gate. They laid its beams and set its doors, its bolts, and its bars. And next to them Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired. And next to him Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshabel, repaired. Next to them Zadok, the son of Bana, repaired. And next to them the Tekoites repaired. But their nobles would not stoop to serve the Lord. Okay, I want to pause right here. There is a lot of this sort of activity going. There's a lot of this sort of repetition going on. This person, the son of, this person, the son of, repaired this part of the wall, repaired this part of the wall, repaired this part of the wall. And honestly, this is part of some of the most intimidating passages that you are ever going to read in the Old Testament. Just a list of names. And if I were to continue reading on, I could pull out a few that are fairly interesting. For example, I just read about the Tekoites who repaired, but their nobles, the leaders of this city, would not repair. They would not serve the Lord. There's another one down in, missed it. In verse 8, Uzziel, the son of Hariah, goldsmiths repaired, and the perfumers also repaired as far as the broad wall. There's another down, I found it in another Bible that I was looking at, but I lost it in this one, where it specifically mentions a person and his daughters repaired. Verse 12. Thank you. Verse 12. Shallum, the son of Heshelah, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, repaired, he and his daughters. So it's not just the common laborers, it's the nobles, it's everyone. It's not just people who work with stone, it's the goldsmiths, it's the perfumers. It's the leaders of Jerusalem, it's their sons, it's their daughters, it's the priests. Everyone is building in here. And if I'm being honest, how many of us have actually read this chapter before tonight? Okay. A few of you have been keeping up with the lesson plans, study plans, the 12 months. But when we really dig into this, when we really look at this, a lot of it seems similar to the lists that we have in Chronicles or the lists that we have in Numbers, where if we just look at it just straight on, it's a list of names, it's a list of places, and we don't really understand it. But we're kind of missing two things. One is, I think, just the sheer amount of names that are here. Just the sheer number of names is staggering. This is a list, and not every name here is a Hebrew name. Not every name here is a person of Jewish descent. We don't think. For example, Jadon the Meronothite in verse 7. We don't know where that is, but Meronothite doesn't sound Jewish. I've seen some commentators argue that it's not actually a Jewish area. Uzziel. Uzziel in verse 8, like we mentioned, one of the son of the goldsmith. That name is very similar to Uzziah from the book of Samuel, which we know to be a Hittite from the northern area, modern-day Turkey. So people who have moved to the city from afar, people who moved in possibly during the time of the exile, their sons, their daughters who moved in while the Jewish people were away, they're still here, and they're helping out to build the city of Jerusalem. This isn't just one person coming in and getting things done. It's a part of that, but there's a lot to be said that it's not Nehemiah rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. It is not Nehemiah came in and by himself, miraculously, which is not out of the realm of possibility, miraculously rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem by himself. God could have done that, but he didn't. There's a part of history, there's a study of history, a reading of history called the Great Man Theory of History. Has anyone ever heard of the Great Man Theory? A few nods. It's this idea that history is made, history is done by the great men of history, by Wellington and Napoleon at Waterloo, by Lee and Grant at Appomattox, by Montgomery and Eisenhower storming the beaches of Normandy. But it's not. It's really not. If you look at history for any blink of time, Wellington and Napoleon both survive at Waterloo. Lee and Grant both survive at Appomattox. Eisenhower and Montgomery both survive Normandy. But there are a lot of people who don't. There are a lot of people on the ground who do history, who form and move and shape the way of the world. And God's hand is moving through this. And that's what this chapter shows. That's what this list of names. It's showing us something very rare in the study of history. If we go back far enough, there's a point where we don't know what goes on. This is what scholars and archaeologists term prehistory. The prehistoric time, where we know that there are people there. We know there are people in the world. We know there are people at this place doing this thing, but we don't know their names. We don't know if they were born in this place and happened to die in this place. We don't know if they were born somewhere else and were on their way to somewhere else. We don't know a lot. This chapter gives us so much context in history that it's almost staggering to look at it through the eyes of a history book. And then there's something else that we see. We see a lot of the work that's being done by people who shouldn't or who wouldn't, under normal circumstances, be doing this. We see the perfumers and the priests. We see the goldsmiths and the daughters, people that wouldn't be listed as doing masonry, as doing woodworking, as doing stoneworking, as building anything. These are the people. These are the people that are building Jerusalem. These are the people that are repairing the city. And these are the people that we are reading about, reading the names of in this very long, very excellent list of capitalized words. I could go back and read more, but I don't think you want me to do that. Yes?
One of the things that you were kind of bearing this out. How in the world did this ragtag, varied group of people with probably not all the right skills, who didn't agree with each other necessarily in terms of worldview, probably.
Right.
Came from different places, may not have even spoken the same dialects of the language that they spoke. How could they possibly have done this and built this wall and resisted the opposition that we're about to read out in the next chapter? How could they possibly have done that? Because Nehemiah was such a great leader? Or maybe some other leader, right? That God's power is what really is at display here in this chapter and in the chapters to come.
I've always thought it was kind of a brilliant strategy to somehow get all of the people to commit to the section of the wall closest to them to buy into it. But if you wonder, do perfumers necessarily know how to build walls? Maybe everybody just had those kind of skills back then. I don't know, but it's fascinating to think what would that be like.
There's some other interesting parts that I kind of want to pull out real quick is just the number of priests that are mentioned. The priests were a sanctified, separated class, all their own. These are the Levites. These are the sons of Levi who were consecrated to do the work of the temple, to preparing the sacrifices, to leading the feasts and the festivals. It's only mentioned twice, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's only mentioned. No, it is only mentioned once at the beginning, where a part of the wall is consecrated. It's only consecrated in one place, and it's only consecrated by one group of people, and that would be the priests. And if you were to look in a study Bible, they usually come with maps of the walls, maps of the city of Jerusalem. If you have a really good one, it'll show you a map of Jerusalem at the time of Nehemiah. You can kind of fudge a little bit and look at the one at the time of Jesus. But the sheep gate that's mentioned here, the sheep gate that was rebuilt by the priests and consecrated, as far as the Tower of the 100, is on the north side of Jerusalem. It's closest to the temple, but it's not a part of the temple. This is not the western wall. This is not the part of the temple complex that's still there today. But it is part of the wall that's closest to the temple, that was most important to protecting the temple of Jerusalem. So it's very important that the priests built it, and it was also important that it was consecrated. That was the priest who consecrated the walls. We assume there's a couple of different theories that the priests would do that along the rest of the walls as well, but it's not mentioned explicitly. Even when priests are mentioned as builders in where is it? Sorry about this. 26, temple servants living in Ophel, repairing the water gate. It's not mentioned that they're consecrating the walls as they go along, even though they were working near the temple as well. A lot of this is, like I said, it's not something that we normally see in history. It's not something that we normally see in history books going this far back. The closest that I could the closest that I could equate this to would be the Homeric hymns, like the Iliad, when he's talking about the muster of the Greeks going to attack Troy. And he talks about all these different people, all these different kings and rulers and leaders of these men going to attack Troy. This is this reads very similarly to that. Reads very similarly to that. Yeah, Mike. Yep.
The previous chapter where the officials are questioning them, and they're putting into their minds, they knew why he was there. They had seen his papers that he was sent by the king. That question is there to put, in my mind, it's there to put fear back into the people of Jerusalem. And what we're seeing in this chapter is Nehemiah's answer, which wasn't an answer to their question, it's a question to the man. He said, we're doing this for God. God is with us. This chapter is about showing that the people of Jerusalem are now believing, because they were there and they had the resources. We talked last week about we talked about walking over the rubble of the walls and how the area is prolific with stone. Right? They could have been building the walls, but they were afraid, and now they are not afraid. Everyone's in. Nehemiah didn't bring. He brought. They were told he was escorted down. But we don't hear about him bringing his great men and the king rebuilding Jerusalem. It's the Jewish people who are rebuilding Jerusalem.
Yes.
Because of their faith.
I just wanted to bring that out, is that the point of this, and going back to last week, the question of why are you doing this, the question of should you be doing this, is Nehemiah doesn't answer that, and instead he leads the people in rebuilding the walls, because it's the people whose faith is restored, the people who are rebuilding these walls now, the people who have a new sense of purpose, a new sense of why they are doing this. And it's not everyone. It's not the entire population. In fact, I mentioned there's one group mentioned, the Tekoites, who from a small village just south of Jerusalem, round about Bethlehem is where archaeologists have that. The Tekoite nobles would not stoop to serve the Lord. I like the phrase there, stooping to serve the Lord, because this is hard labor. This is bending down and picking up stones. This is hard, heavy labor. And some of the leaders, some of the nobles are still not ready to do that work, still not ready to get in on the work, but some of the people, most of the people are. Yes?
It is that we have this record, given that it's very rare for contemporary works to be this detailed in documenting, the people and like who their family was and what they actually completed. I think it's, thinking about it from the perspective of, well, why did someone write this down? Why do we have it in the book of history? It didn't just start out as someone wanting to write history. This is a spreadsheet. They were figuring out who was going to complete each section of the wall, and they were documenting what work that actually went into it to make sure that they got the whole thing done. And then, whoever compiles that document, that I'm sure was available to whatever historian came back to this account later, was able to be like, okay, this person, did the history, this person did the cheat.
Okay, now I want to create the spreadsheet for this. Just go through and yeah, this is a record. This is a lot similar. Like I said, this is very similar to Chronicles, where we just have a record of people and what they did. This is a record of the workers of the walls of Jerusalem, where they were working and who they were working next to. And if you follow it all the way around, it starts with the high priests building up the sheep gate. And it ends in verse 32 with the goldsmiths and the merchants repairing the upper chamber and corner of the sheep gate. It's a perfect circle of Jerusalem. Yes, Renelle, and then Margaret.
What I was going to say is that when we look at the scriptures and take it and apply it, it's a practical application for us as believers, that trusting in God, that all of us working together can accomplish something for His glory and honor. And that's what I see here, and that no one is too, as my son would usually say, is too important to be captured. So there's a job for everyone. And even it's another thing when you're working in groups, you know, you have A personalities, B personalities, and all people working together. But if everyone submits to God and His will, and the idea is to get it done, this is a perfect example of that. And another thing is, you're talking about all these names. The names are there for a reason. There's no name that's not important in God's word. And every person's name is there for a reason. And to look at it like that and ask the question, why did God put that person's name there? What is it there for? And that's what I see here. When all this history is, yes, it's important, but to step back and say, and look at it in the sense of how can we as believers apply this to modern day life now, in what we do, and how we live, and the projects that we have, and take that from this. That's my take on it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it matters to God what each individual person does.
Yep.
That's right.
Absolutely. And this definitely bears that out. Like I said, the great man theory of history is not a good theory of history.
We keep forgetting that. It wasn't like years in getting it done. You had a small, as they say, ragtag group of people accomplishing something, and they did it in record time. But they did it because God was with them, as Nehemiah said. God is in the mix of all of this.
Margaret?
The last page notes for internet. I know they started praying yet, but that's
Right.
Are they, the way we gather each week, are the ones who refuse to do the work, have they started working together as they used to in the temple?
That's a very good question. Short answer is we don't know. And honestly, if we're being honest, that's a very common answer. And it's presumably, the book of Ezra talks about the reconstruction of the temple itself. And it talks about the rededication of the temple as well. And so we can presume off of that at least some of the worship in the temple is being done. Some of the activity has come back, but it's possible that it's not all of. It's nowhere near the complex that it's going to be in the time of Jesus, where we have a huge temple complex, people there every single day, people selling animals for sacrifice, doing all of that stuff. It's not like that yet. It's not like that yet, but it's starting to get there. This is purely my own speculation here. I would say that the high holy days are being celebrated, are being consecrated, and maybe some of the other offerings are there as well, but not the daily activities that we would see, because they don't have a wall. They are still repairing the wall, and one of the securities that a wall brings you is you don't have to worry about being attacked while you're having this happen.
Someone that you're building the walls and everything, I understand everything. I
Yep.
just saw the Paul reading in there, the nobles that are refusing to guard. I just wonder if they're gathering with the regular folks that are working on the wall when they celebrate however they worship. They're clearly separating themselves. So I wonder, like if we were to gather here today.
I think there's just, I see your question. the nobles who did not stoop to work with the Lord, what exactly does that entail? I think there's kind of this, and honestly, this kind of happens in most of when we're reading, especially the Old Testament Hebrew. There's just sort of this cultural. I don't think we fully understand in our 21st century America exactly what 4th century, 3rd century Judea culture was entirely like. So it's either possible that there was a full separation, they were just watching from afar, not engaging at all, or it's possible that they were in the city just refusing to do the work.
Because I didn't see it. You're smart. You know what
Yes, Travis.
I'm not sure I can share anything with you after that, brother. I think if you go back to the first couple of verses of Nehemiah, there are things that I think we glazed over when Nehemiah asked the question about those who were returning from the exile. And that is the fact that, number one, there were survivors of the exile. There was a lot of mental anxiety, challenges that they were actually dealing with. There were those that came back, and then he asked them about them, and the individual who says this to him is that they're in great trouble and disgrace. That tells you where they were emotionally, it tells you where they were mentally, and it tells you where they were physically.
Right.
When you actually lead people, I always told folks, I always was okay with taking an office where you had challenges and challenging people. Because sometimes it's just a matter of getting them motivated to go a certain direction. And I always got more done with that group than a group that had a group of more talented who just weren't willing to follow you. So when you look at this, he ended up with the people who he was able to convert by telling them a multiple of things. And you can't have everybody working on the wall. Some probably doing some feeding. And you always going to have that percent. You know, as my dad said, I used to sit on that stool and do nothing. And so you're going to have those individuals. But I think that despite the time, what we have written in history are the records of the things that survived. There are cultures that had things. When they were conquered, their records were destroyed, so their people would have no sense of history. And the Israelites were no different. And it's still happening in cultures today around the world. But I think in this particular instance, what is very, very satisfying is the same God who helped Nehemiah have the mind to go back and work. It's the same God we serve today.
That's a good way of putting it. I was reading, where was that I saw this, but Nehemiah is the best book to read if you are any sort of a project leader in an office. The book of Nehemiah is how you should lead a project. We have enough time. I think I want to start, I don't want to step on James's toes too much, but I do want to start getting into chapter 4. Chapter 3 is, like I said, this is the record. Shelley said this is the spreadsheet, and I absolutely love that. This is the spreadsheet of how Jerusalem is being rebuilt. But as we remember from chapter 2, not everyone is happy with this. Not everyone's going to just let them work in peace. Not everyone's just going to let them do this. So, chapter 4. Someone want to read the first 2 verses? Can I get the first 2 verses? We'll jump in once. All right, yep, go ahead.
Now when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. And he said in the presence of his brothers and of the army of Samaria, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it for themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they finish up in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish and burned ones at that? Keep going. First one.
Yeah, just the next verse.
Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, yes, what they are building, if a fox goes up on it, he will break down their stone wall.
That's, I like that verse. And it kind of shows just how strange this seems, just how, like we were talking earlier, this is goldsmiths and perfumers. This is the priests and the daughters building the walls. And from our perspective, this makes total sense. This is the body of the Jewish people. This is the full body of the Jewish people coming together and working. But to the outside people, how does this look? This does not look like a project that's going to work. Yes, Margaret.
Say this because it's a rabbit hole.
Go ahead.
When you said that about the daughters, wives will always follow their husbands and fathers if they're good to them. And those daughters probably did a pretty good job and built this solid.
I do want to make sure that I don't sound dismissive on that. Absolutely not. But it's not normally. It's not. I should say this. It's not normally something that we would see, and this is a part of
They would have been trained in that.
This isn't something that they are trained in, and this goes to the priests are trained at being priests. They're not trained to cut stone. The perfumers are definitely not trained to cut stone, and the goldsmiths maybe, but probably not. Yeah, Mike.
Well, we're also talking about people that they were decimated, they were, the survivors who came back, they were in captivity for generations, and the people who were there, left behind, were a shadow of their former self. We're not talking about a superpower that's bouncing back after a bad blow. It's talking about people who, lived in fear, people who have lived generations removed from what they once were. And if they're people, if these nobles or these leaders are people of history, they're like, we know what you once were, we don't want you to be back, but also, what are you going to do? Like, you've never done this before. You're these generations removed from people who did it. Where are you? Why would you be thinking you can just step up and do this? But they're also not realizing they have something that they don't have. They have God's power.
And then he just brought out a very important point that you probably were going to, that they were left behind. When Ezra and Nehemiah came, they redeemed their sons and daughters. The nobles had sold them. And many times that may have meant something else like trafficking, but Ezra and Nehemiah brought them back. So what Mike was talking about is a very important point because they redeemed them. Ezra and Nehemiah redeemed them from that. They would have been grateful to God first. And Ezra, they would have worked with the will because they had their whole person.
And there is something to be said that like we were saying earlier, this work happens. The work on the walls of Jerusalem happens after the building of the temple. The temple is rebuilt, and then the walls are rebuilt. It's putting the priorities first, and getting back on the path to maybe not being what they were, but being what they could be as far as the people of God. Yes.
People tend to make fun of things that they find threatening in order to make it less threatening in their own minds. So the fact that this is commented in here that they're jeering and they're making jokes about a box knocking it down is probably an indicator that it was actually starting to come together and be something worth talking about.
This is bully 101.
Yes.
That's really, but this was part of the pattern of what they were receiving before he actually showed up. This is part of the reason.
Yep.
When people are second guessing you about your God, and about how you're actually doing, it was an attack on character unlike the way we actually say it. In some way maybe shaming our God. We don't take it the same way in our society today. But it was very personal for them.
Yeah. Especially the fox. Foxes were not exactly known for bravery or courage. You don't exactly see one of the labors of Hercules is not going after a fox. At least not at that. No, it's not at that time. So, I want to go on to this one, to verse 4 through 5. So Tobiah the Ammonite says what they are building. If a fox goes up on the wall, he will knock these stone walls down. In chapter 4, the quotation ends at verse 3. So this is now Nehemiah. My Bible has it as just one solid paragraph of text. I really think there should be a separate paragraph here. So as a separate paragraph. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads, and give them up to be plundered in a land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt, and let not their sin be blotted out from your sight, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders. This is Nehemiah writing this out. This is Nehemiah still. We don't know when exactly this is written. We're pretty sure. Historians are pretty sure that Nehemiah was the author, that Nehemiah was the one who wrote it down. We're just not sure quite when. Did he write this as it was going on? Like Shelley said, was chapter 3 a spreadsheet that he wrote down while they were working? It's very probable. But was this written after the fact or during the fact? If it was written during the fact, then this is very understandable. This is very, what's your gut reaction when someone comes up and taunts you like that? You want to respond immediately. If this was after the fact, and Nehemiah's had the time to sit back and cool off a little bit, and he still writes this out, he is very much he is very much realizing that two of these men are set against him. And he realizes that this is not supposed to work. This is not supposed to be how it is. So he's calling on the Lord to reverse their taunts, to make sure that, to whatever they say to me, let it happen to them. I'm rubber and you're glue. Yes?
I think an important part of this verse is they were in the promised land at that point.
Yes.
People who were not part of the promise. Maybe I guess it's about, may have had some connection there. But either way, he's asking for them to be taken into captivity. Israel taken into captivity. Yeah. So it's pulling it back to being an honor for God and a tie for that land to be for his people.
And let's not just kind of gloss over that. He's asking for, he's not just asking for what they said to happen to them, which is not coincidentally, but interestingly, what happens to Pharaoh at the 10th plague of Egypt when God kills the firstborn children in Egypt. That's what Pharaoh said he was going to do to the Israelites. So Nehemiah is basically asking for that to happen again. Yeah.
I think if I put myself in Nehemiah's place, what I want to do is I want to wait till dark. I want to get 10, 12, biggest guys that have been working the wall and go get them to sleep. But anybody doesn't do that.
No, he does not.
So what he does, though, is what I think this is the big takeaway for me. He lets God take care of it. Turns it completely over to God. He doesn't distract people, himself or anyone else from building the wall. Right? Which he could have done. Could have further delayed that. Just turns it completely over to God.
All right, and the next verse, verse 6. What's the response? What is the response of the people of Jerusalem to this insult by the leader in Samaria and the leader of the Ammonites? Not just the leaders, but also he's joking among his army. We don't know how big this is, but it is an army. He's joking with his army that they could come in and knock it down. What is the response? So he built the wall. And all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. Like what Margaret was saying, there's this focus, there's intent, there's a willingness, there's a want to work to work to build the city back to maybe not what it was, but what it could be.
Redeemed you. What can I do for you, Lord?
Yes.
To Dave's point, he doesn't take time out of his busy schedule to react, to their mind. He's the leader. He has to set the example. And in your mind, you can almost picture him in that moment. It's almost like we're giving strength, right? When someone is harping at you, when someone is trying to get on your nerves, and you have a task to do, it's Lord, give me strength. Remove them from the vicinity because they work to do. And what they got done, because Nehemiah was in charge, and because he did not take time to take people out of the equation to go deal with it, they got the wall built.
Shelley or Travis?
What does it mean that it was joined together to half its height? Does that mean it became half the height of the original wall?
So basically what that means is joined together, that phrase means that it was it's a complete wall encircling the entire area, which is actually kind of rare at this point. Normally you just build portions of a wall. There might even be huge gaps in a wall at some point, given strategic points, but to have it fully encompassed, but to half its height. So where the wall was, it's about half that height. So it's not finished. Nehemiah is not saying that the wall is finished now. He's saying that after this taunt, we continued the work to about half the height. There we are. Travis.
I think that we forget how God prepares us for certain things. Nehemiah was in a job where his very life was at the behest of the king. His job as a cupbearer was to consume what the king didn't first, so that the potential of his life actually would be gone before the king's. He also sat in the audience of a king making decisions, watching a king make those decisions.
Right.
Being a strategist, being a thinker, watching his those who were in his immediate inner circle taking care of business within the kingdom, coming before him and preparing those things. There were often times Nehemiah would have been in that audience and seeing those things. I'm not sure that these two ragtag bandits really gave him much of a threat. I think that God used all of that to prepare him for this job, to be the individual, to go forward and be able to do some things and speak those words of encouragement in a way so that they were able to do. And later on, he tells them again, I can't come down from doing the work of God.
So just want to tie this together. One last thing for the evening is where we left off at the end of chapter 2 last week was with the question, what is this thing you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king? And what's Nehemiah's answer? The God of heaven will make us prosper, and we, his servants, will arise and build. Just doing the work. Then then in this chapter we have them same people, same cast of characters, hurling insults and mocking their efforts. And what's the response? So we built the wall. Sometime, and like I said, Nehemiah, best book to read if you're ever a project manager or leadership role of some kind. Best book to read. Because when he's asked stupid questions, we're going to build the wall. When he's mocked, we built the wall. Just focus on the work. James is going to be back next week, so I will pick up somewhere in chapter 4. Thank you and have a good night. Don't.
Pure, enlightening the eye. Lord, I come.